Good evening. I am here again with Queen Wheeler. If you've missed some of these before, Queen and I, this is our third night, have been talking about some of the myths that support racism. So having those hard conversations, which is always preferable to do live on Facebook without planning for them, right? So tonight we were going to talk about Manifest Destiny. Before we get started on that, though, last night we had a conversation and we just were going to start with that. So thank you for joining us, though. And if you want to join in the conversation, post in comments or ask us questions, and make sure you give us likes so we know you're there. But what I was talking to Queen about last night, she and I keep going back to 2016, and I think it was because it was a growth year for both of us. Mm-hmm. So we're always talking about 2016 Queen, 2016 Amy. And I was thinking, if 2016 Amy was here last week or the last 2 weeks, what would she have done? And I think what she would have done, and I was just talking through my thought process because maybe this will help some other people or connect to them. I think 2016 Amy would have spoken out and had some kind of post when George Floyd was murdered. She probably wouldn't have said murdered. She probably would have said death, that the death was wrong. She would have been too worried about using the word murder. And then when the riots and the looting started, she would think about posting, and she'd be nervous about posting because there are some Black people that are doing the rioting and looting. But then she would think about it, and she would think, if white people only were doing this, would I post? And she would decide she would. And so then she would think that she's being racist by not posting about the looting. And so she probably would then post, very likely one of those, the death was wrong, but two wrongs don't make a right, or one of those types of posts. And then I made an assumption that I don't know was true or not about 2016 Queen. I said 2016 Queen probably would have praised me for the earlier post about the death of George, and then been silent about the looting. Or I thought maybe might have even liked it. Queen's version of 2016, she didn't go quite as far. Do you want to talk about 2016 Queen and what you think she would have been going through?
I know what she would have been going through. I'm interested too. And what did you do in 2016?
Because I didn't go back and look.
You don't remember?
No. So what I do remember is we have a common friend who, because I don't remember, sorry, but I don't remember which killing was happening in 2016. I know there were. And we had a common friend.
How many is the question? It wasn't.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So we had a common friend who was posting what a lot of people are posting right now, saying, those of you, like, I see you, those that aren't speaking up enough or are too silent, I see you. And when I'm not friends with you anymore, you'll know why. And she actually didn't unfriend me on Facebook, but she definitely keeps me at a distance. I think when you were describing last night, like, you just watch people's behavior, what they say, what they do, and decide whether it's safe for you and your family. Mm-hmm. And I may be making this up, but I feel like that's what she did. And she decided, this is not a safe place for me. It's not a place for me to put my energy. So I lost a really good person because of my lack of action in 2016. And I hope, because I know, I hope that 2024 Amy is different than 2020 Amy. Mm-hmm. But I hope I'm not making as many horrible mistakes that are going to cause a lot more relationships to be lost with the mistakes I'm making now. Because I know I'm making them. Because like, so maybe we should, in case people don't know the pool analogy, if they didn't see the first video, maybe share that again. Because I was going to say, I know I'm wet, but people might think we're kind of weird because we're always talking about how wet we are.
Right. Yeah, I will. I'll share that again. So back in 2016, we were still in this situation that we are today. It doesn't seem like we even moved the needle at all.
Well, it seems it's scarier today. It's more in the open today.
Well, I would say this. It was the same in 2016.
I didn't have visibility to it.
It's scarier for white people today.
Yeah, thank you for correcting me.
It's scarier for white. It was just as scary for me back then, right? So yeah, it was scary. And if you remember, it was Alton Sterling that was saying, "I can't breathe." And we watched that on videotape and watched him be murdered right there on the streets of New York. And everybody, you know, there was and I was so shocked by how it impacted me. It caught me off guard. It, you know, I've told the story very few times, and I've just started sharing this story this year, really. But it knocked me out. Like, it would have me gone for a couple of days. Like, I'd be in the bed. It just messed me up. And then to see it every day, seemed like every day you were seeing another video, every day. Mm-hmm. And it didn't matter whether it was Black children, Black young boys playing with toy guns, or a man in Walmart, or, you know, a woman driving. It just did not matter. Like, Black was against the law. So,
and Randy pointed out Eric Gardner, New York City, I Can't Breathe, selling loose cigarettes.
That's what was going on. So back then, my sphere was 95% white. And, you know, the people that I worked with, the people that I hung with, the people that I had dinner with, people that I traveled with, you know, 95% of my sphere was white, in my industry, personal life, everything. And it rocked me so hard, right? And I just remember talking to them and expressing like how much pain I was in, and being utterly disappointed that their response was to try to educate me on how perhaps I was looking at it wrong, or didn't understand law enforcement, or what did the guys do? We need to wait and see, you know, all of that. That's how they chose to respond to me, to tell me what real statistics are, and what, you know, what real racism is, and all of this kind of stuff, and basically claim there is no racism. And I remember being utterly so disappointed and so hurt that the people that I had been with, eat, sleep, drink, travel, all of that, could not empathize. Couldn't imagine it being my son, couldn't imagine it being my husband. And I was blue in the face. Well, I would tell you this, I talked until I start looking in their eyes and seeing, oh, here she go again. She still don't get it. Now, they saying that about me. Here I go again. I still don't get it. Not they don't get it, but like, oh, here she go again. And when I started seeing that, because I literally, I think I was just acting out in desperation because I was hurting and wanted to connect to those around me for comfort. It didn't happen. So I was super disappointed. And then I went to another part of my community, still mostly white, And they're supposed to be enlightened people, aware people, aligned people. They're in all the woo-woo, all of that stuff, and thought, surely here I'll find, some comfort. And I was devastated again that they couldn't get it, right? And them saying things like, well, what do you want? Well, you're saying it wrong, basically, oh, well, you're generalizing. Oh, well, all people aren't, all of that stuff, like
The
looking at
same
me
thing
like,
here today.
yeah, basically looking at me like, girl, you need to go do some healing and then you'll see this right. Right? Then you'll see it right. And so that was like, oh my gosh, that took me into the spiral of disappointment, like to my lowest point of disappointment. And but what I learned from that was, one, me being Black did not qualify me to speak to Black people, because I realized in that moment there's a lot of people out there speaking to Black people about their healing who really shouldn't be. And so I asked myself the question, well, what qualifies you? And I was like, well, being Black didn't. So then I started educating myself, because truly this is a trauma that's unique. It is not the same as I grew up poor just like you, right? Or I got stopped by the police just like you, or I was ostracized from my community. I didn't fit in either, that kind of stuff. This is totally different than that. And so back then I think I was more desperate and this is why I was desperate, because I truly believed that it was all about relationship. That if you had relationship with people and you saw their heart, they saw your heart, all of that, then that would cure racism, right? I was so convinced of that, until I would look at in their eyes, time after time, person after person, and realize it don't matter how much they love me or how much I love them. They couldn't see, they couldn't hear, and they sure as hell wasn't ready to give up their privilege. Period. It was made known to me quickly that if they had to choose, I wasn't going to be the choice. And again, I said yesterday, if my son is not safe in your world, if my husband is not safe in your world, then it doesn't make sense for me to be in your world. If my daughters aren't safe in your world, it doesn't make sense for me to be in your world. And so, but the thing is when I realized that and came to myself with the question of what qualifies me, and start doing my studying and all of that to educate myself on this specific trauma around being in a racist society, that what Black people experience, because it is traumatic. If you think that me watching Black men being shot down, children being gunned down, women being slammed to the ground, if you think that that's not messing with my head, then it's no wonder you can't get it. Right? If you can't see how that messes with the head of a human being, especially a Black human being, then it's no wonder you can't get it. I think now, well, I don't think, I know the difference now, after I've learned the lesson from 2016 by going through those experiences with all of those relationships. Now I understand that it's a matter of choice for them. It's not about me convincing white people of anything, right? It's a matter of choice, because just like we said yesterday, there's 76.5%. more than half of them could wake up tomorrow and say, okay, enough of this, and everything will stop. Everything. They have that power, right? To wake up and say, all right, gig's up, it's over, right? And make a change.
That I can't think of her name. The white woman that's been doing this work since the 70s.
Oh yes.
She's
Blue Eye.
What is it?
Brown Eye Blue Eye project.
Yeah.
Yes.
She called it from the beginning because she will, when she speaks, she says, how many of you would choose to be Black? How many of you white people would choose to be Black? And no one does. Jane Elliott. Thank you, Randy.
Jane Elliott. Yeah. I was looking at her.
And that calls it right there. Everyone says no. That means we all understand that racism is real, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. But I'm telling you, it's a disappointing thing, though. I'm gonna tell you, from a Black, because especially if you're a Black person who you really keeping hope alive, and you thinking, oh no, it's about relationship. You know, these people love me. They, you know, I love them. And then for things like this to happen, and you see their silence, or you see them fighting about why the Black person must have, you know, there must have been a problem, or you see them fighting for things like, or saying things like, oh, well, these riots are horrible. I was with you until then. Oh, wow. You know, or people who, like, I've had, girl, you don't know how many, I've had some white people come up to me at my home and talk about the riots and not ever acknowledge why there are protests, but talk about their fear of the riot. Not protest, the riot. Right? They don't even call it a protest. And I'm sitting there, I'm looking at them like, I obviously this is a colorless situation. Like, obviously, because there's no way that it is not a colorless situation, and they're talking to me like this and saying what they're saying. Ain't no way. Right. But yeah, but such as you know, the type of things that are said. But yeah, today, if I was like I was in 2016, I'd be saying things like, racism is horrible, and we all need to work together and look into your hearts and all that stuff, right? I'd be doing that. But no, I have no desire to do that at this point. If there are people who I can support in their evolution towards oneness and unity, I do that through education and through coaching. And, you know, I guess we'll talk about that a little more near the end of our series. But today, trying to get somebody to understand and trying to get them to feel my pain. Oh, no. We don't even have time for that, because that doesn't change anything. They don't need to know my pain in order to know what it is that is going on and going and doing something about it. You don't need to know my pain to make change.
And there's plenty of stories out there if they want to see it. There's a million.
Yeah. And you, oh gosh, telling stories to prove that you're not racist, meaning saying I have a Black adopted grandchild, or I have a Black cousin, or I have and showing pictures of them saying Black Lives Matter, or that is, yeah, that's
I shared, I'll put it in the comments, but there was a really good blog that a young man had written who had attended a mainly all white school. And so he has finally spoken up. So he acknowledged that he normally wouldn't. And he shared his truth. So if people need those stories, I can post that there. And it's a good
explanation. This is the thing. Why would you need a story when you see videos of people literally being murdered?
Oh, I know.
That's what I'm saying. That's why, it's like we're in this era where people are hustling their stories anyway. This is the story era. Hustle your story, and so that people are sucked in, and then tell them how you became a six-figure person. Right? Hustle your story, get them to buy in, then tell them how they can make 100,000, 200,000, 500,000 in one launch. That's the, so hustling stories, that's not cool. And I think that some people are doing that. They're hustling the stories of my Black grandchild or my Black this or whatever, but still bringing attention to themselves rather than actually doing the work and looking at how are they a part of the racist society and what can they do about it. Yeah. So
telling a mother who is not Black anything about her racism if she has a Black child is one of the scariest things. And I understand from the point of view is like that's a role that we all take so seriously. So when someone questions your role and how you're doing as a mother, like that is where we freak out when people question us there. Yeah. But again, whenever you get questioned and you're triggered, it's always because there's some truth there that you're afraid of.
Yeah. I do feel because I know people in that position, and I feel for their, because it's like they're walking a tightrope, because you don't know what it is to be Black, yet it is necessary for you to be conscious of what it is to be Black and to navigate that. And that's a tough place to be in. So when you are in that place, like it really, really takes educating yourself then. Yeah. Like it really takes a lot of education. It really takes staying vigilant and persistent, right? And having a little thick skin in order to deal with the times that you make missteps, because you're gonna make them. You're gonna make them.
And that, I mean, being a parent is for me one of the most challenging things anyway. So if you don't have that challenge, it's already hard. So adding that, all the extra you need to do to educate yourself, got to be overwhelming.
Yeah. I've not seen any parents do it. I have seen a post with a grandparent do it. I have seen a post with a auntie, or uncle do it. I haven't seen a post where, a parent of a Black child has been like, hey, look at all lives. I haven't seen that. Thank God. I don't know how it
yeah, they didn't. No, when I've seen it, we have Facebook mom groups up here that are
okay.
They're just crazy. And so there's one that I've been in that's focused on racism. And
gotcha.
There was a woman that was called out because she said some things that weren't appropriate. It's good, just a learning. Again, we're all wet. She was wet. She got called out for being wet. But her response was, I'm not wet. My child is Black.
It
turned in, it exploded.
Oh, man. Yeah.
So about your pool analogy so they know what we're talking about.
Okay, so I was, when it comes to racism, everybody's asking the question, are you racist? Are you racist? And a lot of white people are being challenged with that question. And so, and I think it's a ridiculous question. And I think it's a ridiculous waste of time to grapple with the question, because what we do know is that this country was founded on racism and violence and thievery. We know that. Barbarianism, that we know that, right? And so to ask if you are racist or if you have any lingering effects of racism within you is like jumping in a pool and saying, I'm not wet. Am I wet? I'm not wet, right? And we are all in that pool. If you were born in America or you've been here longer than a year, we're all in that pool. So it's just a matter of figuring out, how do I get out of the pool? And then I'm looking at, how wet am I? Now I'm sure as hell I'm not as wet as my great 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 grandfather. You might not be as wet as your great 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 grandfather, but you sure as hell ain't dry. So then it's a matter of finding the tool, which is the towel, right? Finding the towel, drying yourself off, and then finding your other tools. And those are symbolized as putting on a new pair of clothes. Put on dry clothing. So that's what we mean by when we say, we're wet, or how wet are you? Because it affects us all. And that's why I'm able to be in this conversation about these myths that keep racism going, that white people are faced with, right? These myths that they are conditioned in. I'm able to join in that conversation because as long as I'm here in America, especially if I'm operate in the white world, meaning around a lot of white people, then I done got wet too. So I have to look at that. So today's myth of manifest destiny, I am pretty geeked about. I'm pretty excited about it. It's going to be interesting because if any one myth is going to give it under some people's skin, I can only imagine that it would be this one. The myth of manifest destiny. So I'll read it so that everybody knows what that is. How, again, we are taking these myths from a paper written by Dr. Peggy McIntosh, and it's called, what is it called? It's called White People Facing Race, Uncovering the Myths That Keep Racism in Place. So today, myth of manifest destiny includes the idea that white people were intended by God to take the lands of indigenous people and others in order to possess the whole of what is now the continental United States. Under this myth, whites do not have to allow into their moral or ethical awareness the fact that we live on land taken from those who were here before us and whose cultures and physical existences white people attempted to destroy, believing explicitly or implicitly that God intended white people to settle North America, has excused many whites from seeing white settlement as a matter of racial oppression in which they are the evil doers. Once you say God in anything, God in the flag, it's over for white. Like, yeah,
Yep.
Ku Klux Klan carried the cross and the flag. When I was studying some history, and one of the things that was brought out is that in every place where the white man conquered, destroyed, and colonized, they led in with the cross and followed it up with guns. They led with the Bible and followed it with guns. They send in the missionaries and then they come in and wipe out the people. So if I can't control you through religion, then I will control you with the bullet. So yeah, myth of manifest destiny, conquering because God told you to go take that land.
Mm-hmm.
God told us it's ours. I mean, I'm sure, what's today? Sunday?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure they heard that in plenty of churches today. Plenty of churches today. The
God
land
is
is
on our
ours.
side.
Yeah, God is on our side. We fight the righteous fight. That's why we're able to go into other people's countries and destroy, obliterate, kill, and say we are the righteous.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We are the righteous. And then this last weekend, when we were going to send our put our soldiers out in the street, still under the guise of righteousness. And it's amazing. But what is your
Justin brought up a good point already. A God white people think looks like them, which can go right into, my piece, I guess. Because I was going to talk about just in my church, I think, again, this is one of those things that just wasn't even talked about because it was no question. This is the way it is. But I definitely always heard God is on our side, a righteous God. And God in my church was blonde, blue eyes, that picture. I don't know how this blue eye, like, no wonder people noticed him if he came out looking like that, right?
You was like, "Ooh, Jesus, fine."
Like, the Viking came down there and whatever. Yeah. But at my church, they talked also about the fact that the Jews were the chosen people. And so it also politicized that we always had to be on the side of the Jews in any type of conversations in Israel because they're the chosen people of God. And if you're not on the side of the Jews, you're going to lose. So my church would have never, ever embraced Jewish people. We just have to be on their side. So it's not like a happy, like, we're all together. It's just if we're in a war, we got to be on the side with them.
Yeah. That's the first time I encountered that, is when I start going to a white church. And yes, that's very much the messaging, is that Jews are God's chosen people and we must stand with them no matter what, against everybody. Otherwise, the end of the world will come and, God's wrath will come down. And it didn't matter what was going on. Like, they could be slaughtering people in Palestine. It didn't matter.
Yep.
Stay on their side because that's God's chosen people. And, I think that, which I could never understand, even though at the time, I got wet for sure in that. It doesn't make sense when you say that we're all God's children. Now, for anybody's God, right? For whatever your created God is, for your God to have a preference, right? And then you say that you don't, that doesn't make much sense. So your God is racist because your God prefers a people over another.
Mm-hmm.
But you're not. I don't even get it because, again, this goes back into how the country was founded, because everything was founded on race, with the racist ideology, right? Which means we are better.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore we will set everything up to support that, to include everything we do is better, meaning whatever our God is superior too. Because if we're superior, our God is superior, which means that we will kill your God as well. which is what they did. They went out and they killed people's gods by forcing their religion on them, right? And to this day, as I look at different news medias, postings, articles, and things like that, this is the very thing that people are fighting against. They're like, when I say against, I'm saying some of the white people that I see, including some Black people who are wet from these myths, okay, is that it's not about fighting racism. It's about fighting for God. And God loves everybody. Therefore, racism doesn't really exist, right? Because God died for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, this doesn't really exist. Everybody just needs to join our religion, go to church, and it'll solve everything. Like, I've seen posts like that where that's the only problem is that you guys don't believe in our superior God. And if you did, but I'm telling you, where I witnessed the probably worst racism was in church over the years, because it ain't no kind of racism like racism under the guise of religion. Ain't no kind like that, because that's some righteous racism. Like, they go hard for it. They be like all in it, because it gives them it pumps them up with make them feel just in it, you know. They be like, yeah, they be going for. And America, of course, the religion that they came in with was Christianity. And so, man, they be going hard for G. And the thing is I happen to ask, okay, are they talking about white Jesus or Black Jesus? So that I know how dangerous the situation is. Because if they talking about white Jesus, then that means that they talking about the same one that told them it was okay to own my people.
Yeah.
So then I know I'm in trouble, right? Because that's the same one that told them go in and take the land, go in and slaughter all the indigenous people. Now go and steal the African people so that they can build the country and farm your land and create wealth, right? So if I have to pay attention, like and I sit and I listen to see which one are they talking about. White Jesus or Black Jesus? Now,
and
I know that. Huh?
I think we talked about this before, but I had a very, very long period away from the church. Mm-hmm. And some of that was, I guess, because I didn't know about Black Jesus, because I was hearing about white Jesus, but the white Jesus I was hearing about didn't match what I was reading in the Bible. And what I was reading in the Bible, I could relate to. And what I was hearing just didn't fit for me. And so instead of realizing that the church was the problem and religion was a problem, I threw the whole thing out.
Yeah. We saw Black Jesus, and he had a knee on his neck. We saw him. He had a knee on his neck for over 8 minutes. So if anybody wondering what he looked like,
yeah,
there you go. There you go. This, to me, is this myth is one of the biggest blinders and the hardest thing to break through for white people. Is the idea.
Even all the stories like Christopher Columbus and Columbus Day. My kids were furious with me in high school because they were like, why did you allow us to be a part of that in grade school? Like, we had to sing the Christopher Columbus song, and like, why didn't you teach us the truth? Why did you not go to the school and like knock down the doors? And I mean, that wasn't, my kids are only 19. So it isn't that long ago that I wasn't even really thinking about those things.
Yeah.
And I mentioned it. I was at the gym talking to some friends, and we were talking about Monday. And someone said, "Oh, is that Columbus Day?" And I was like, "Oh, maybe my kids are off of school." And then I was like, "I'm just joking. Evanston would never be off for Columbus Day. If we were, it would be called Indigenous People Day, and it'd be something else." And my friend had never. She was like, "What are you talking about?" Like, she had no idea still. And so, like I said, I wasn't aware when the kids were in grade school. And last year, my friend had no idea that there was any controversy around Columbus Day. And that was one I heard about earlier because I'm Norwegian. And my grandparents are like, "What are you talking about, Christopher Columbus? Like, he didn't. Leif Erikson found, So I had this other, and it still wasn't a real discussion about the whole thing, but it was like, no, he wasn't the first person over here besides the indigenous people. It was Norwegian.
Right. It's all of these stories that we have been told and taught have been taught through the white lens. Of course, the person who controls the narrative controls the story, right? The person who controls the narrative controls the story. The person who controls the narrative controls history. And why would a people who would come and slaughter? I was watching oh gosh, what was it? My brother has sent me the
we didn't slaughter Queen. We had Thanksgiving together.
Oh, right. But there was this documentary. I'm gonna look at it right now. Well, actually, there's this paper that I didn't read. I I decided that I would go to YouTube and look up and see if anybody did a documentary on it. That's the easiest way to do it sometimes. And so I went to YouTube to see if anybody did a documentary on it, and I started watching it, and it is called, let's see here. Can't be too far down. Oh gosh, maybe it is. Okay. I've been watching a lot of YouTube. Well, anyway, I'll find it. But anyway, it was done by indigenous people. They were narrating it, and I think the gentleman, the historian on there, said that when they got here, there were 64 million indigenous people. And by the time they finished slaughtering them, I think it was down to like 2 million or something like that. Girl, we never hear anything like that. That many were slaughtered in order to take this land? Oh my gosh. So if you came in and you slaughtered millions upon millions upon millions upon millions of indigenous people, why would you tell that in the history books? Why would you not wash that away? Why would you not create a different narrative? Right? Why would you tell all of the atrocities? Why would you, right? If we didn't have the slave narratives, which I'm sure there are very many of your viewers that probably don't even know that there is such a thing. But if we didn't have the slave narratives where slaves, actual people who were slaves in this country, were able to tell their story, many things would have been lost in history. Right. So it often baffles me why, instead of really looking at the history of this country, the history of Black people, the history of white people as it is in truth, right? Instead of looking at that, we would rather not know our history and go to the Bible and go off of that history, right? We'd rather talk about that. But as us, white people would rather talk about that and as them as being the persecuted and God delivering them out of places.
Delivering from evil. Yep.
Yeah, they're never the ones that are keeping anybody in bondage. They're never the ones they're always the ones that God chooses to bring out and God chooses to fight on behalf of, and God chooses, right? And the other people are the evil people, you know. They always identify with that.
I think if I remember like stories and things I would think about when I was little, like what I could relate to, I would always think about like how scary it would have been to live out in the like plains, you know, because you're living there with your family and the Indians might come one day and scalp you. And like, I never thought, oh, how terrifying it must have been to have the white people come and kill everyone, the millions of people. Like my fear and what I could empathize with was, you know, probably the very, 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 very small percentage where that story happened instead of the real story.
And the crazy thing is all of that was done in the name of God.
And
in the name of divine destiny. It was their divine destiny to have this land. And all of that
is reminding us that they came here to escape religious persecution.
Right. Isn't that ironic? Right? Yeah. Isn't that ironic? To be able to get upset about how you're being treated by your government and going and stealing land and saying, but yet we march and it's a problem. You left a whole country and came and wiped everybody out and started to create your own. Yet you got a problem about people marching, protesting peacefully in the street. Even if they did knock out some windows and knock down some doors, did you hear what I just told you about the indigenous people? They started with 64 million.
Well, and even before the rioting and looting, these people had a fucking problem with Starbucks not having a Christmas cup. You know, like it's way more ridiculous than, you know, how many things do you see on the feed about that? Starbucks doesn't have a Christmas cup. And it, like, what kind of God do you have that would give a shit what Starbucks, like, what kind of God needs to be worshipped by a Starbucks cup? Tell me that.
And this is the thing. If for anybody who knows me, I'm a very spiritual person. So I really don't play when it comes to my spirituality and my creator, right? I don't play when it comes to that. What we're talking about, we're not talking about the all, right? The creator, this essence that we try to name, but it's nameless because it's so beyond us, right? We're not talking about that. We're talking about the created God, the one that we create and do these atrocities in the name of. So let's be very clear about that. We're talking about the God that would tell you to go slaughter a people in order to take their land. That's a created God, because that's like saying that there is, like, it would never make sense if we said, yeah, there's, you know, Mr. and Mrs. Smith over there, they had 10 kids. They told, you know, they really liked those older 4 and told the older 4 they should go slaughter the other 6 and take everything they got. And that would sound really goofy for us to even think that a parent would say such a thing. But yet we've created this God concept that does that, tells one thing that it created to slaughter another thing that it created for whatever reason. And we all know, if you do your studies, that it's all over resources. right? Anytime that there's been slaughter, it's over resources. We think that we're fighting over ideals and morals and ideologies. No, resources. We want your oil, we coming in. We want your land, we coming in. We want your diamonds, we coming in. It's all resources, right? So, and that hasn't changed over history. I mean, you can read and read and read, and it's still going to be the same narrative, the same storyline. But yeah, be clear. We know which God we talking about on here. So there is no sense for any of y'all who want to come out and say we just need Jesus. And if it's the white Jesus, just know that I'm allergic, because he already told y'all can own my people, and that didn't work for us very well. But we're making fun of that and light of that. But what we're not making fun of is the actual creator. Whatever that is, which I don't pretend like I know, which is another one of my things. Like how people pretend that like you really know. Like how exactly do you really know? To the point to where you can claim superiority, the point that you can claim the only, and everybody else's is obsolete, because you are so lucky, so chosen, that out of all of these people on the earth, you chose the right God. You were lucky enough to choose the right God, and everybody else is misguided. That is another side effect of that superiority complex. That's all that is, and it feeds into it, right? Now, my creator, there's no such thing, right? There's no such thing as superiority and all of that kind of stuff. So just to be clear, that people understand what we're talking about. We're talking about the myth of manifest destiny, where a people have believed that God ordained them to take the land, right? To conquer, to go through and take people's land and over and colonize everywhere they go, and feel like it's a mission, like they doing people a favor. They're saving people by colonizing them and taking over their resources, and then turn around. And this is what be pissing me off. How you gonna kill, rob, steal, turn around, give me back my stuff, and say you doing God's work? Well, you got the resources because you stole them from me, and then you're gonna turn around and give them back to me as charity, talking about you doing God's work. That is like the biggest hustle. Like that is the biggest hustle. Go steal somebody's stuff and sell it back to them.
Jane just pointed out when Black people started becoming educated, that was a problem for some white people, and we learned looting and rioting from them.
Like I said, that's what the country was founded on. That it was founded on that, and I think some Black people just got to the point where they felt like, well, if it worked for you, why can't it work for us? You got yours by force. You came in and killed people and whatever. Why doesn't it, since marching peacefully doesn't work for you, then let's become like you.
And we just have to point out the looting and rioting that's going on right now is not only Black people.
Hello. It's probably not even mostly Black people, right? I don't know. I have no idea. I don't know if somebody out there taking numbers, counting how many of who and what percentage. And it really doesn't even matter, right? It really doesn't even matter. My question is, because that's a symptom. And I said this to somebody today. Nobody has ever been healed from a disease by treating the symptoms. Nobody. So all of these things that we're seeing, those are symptoms. Mm-hmm. Those are symptoms. So to focus on those things is just a distraction. If you had cancer in your body, you're not going to go to the doctor every day or every month and be treated for pain, be treated for a headache, be treated because you're coughing, be treated for. No, you want them to treat the cancer so that you will stop coughing and stop having a headache and stop having an achy body, right? Only in this conversation of racism does that work, where you can argue all day about the symptoms. You can make concessions over the symptoms and leave the actual disease in place until the next time there's an outbreak. And then you do the same thing over again. And that's what we've been. But again, I think this God God is on our side. We are patriots. We are like, all of that is wrapped in with God, patriotism. And that's what makes it so dangerous, to be honest with you. Because anytime you mix faith with the ideology, it gets lethal. Because when you connect anything to God, because it will cause people to do things that they otherwise would not do. It will cause people to be able to lynch somebody and put a burning cross on their yard when they believe that it is ordained by God that the races should not mix. And you can find something in the Bible to support that, right? They were working on behalf of God. And that's why the anger is so venomous, because when you're working on behalf of God, there is no kind of hate like the hate that comes from those who are doing it in the name of God, because it's a righteous indignation, right? And I'm telling you, like, over the last many, many years, I heard so much over the pulpit in church, in white churches, that like it very much support the and it's done in such a slick way too. Done in such a slick way. I mean, it's done in a way that make you feel like if you don't vote Republican Party, you going to hell, because they are the only ones who stand for morality. Like, they had me so jacked up. I became a Republican because I was seriously scared that I was going against the will of God to vote otherwise. Like, I thought, oh, well, shoot, God don't like this and God don't like that, and the other party, all of that kind of stuff. Religion will mess you up. And it's not just religion, because religious people, especially Christians, will think that I'm picking on them, but I'm not, because it's not just religion. I see it in spirituality now. I see it in mindfulness now. I see it in metaphysics world now. I see it in coaching now. Everybody using your faith against you, using spirituality against you, using high thought against you. Think good thoughts. Change the vibration. Do that, right? In other words, ignore what's in front of you, because that's not real. That's not the real world. That's not what we should be focusing on. Well, hell, tell that to Jesus, who had a knee on his neck. Tell him this ain't the real world. And that ain't what we need to be focusing on. Right? So, yeah. Right.
So that the kids locked in the detention centers right now.
What'd you say?
So tell that to the kids locked in the ICE detention centers right now,
yes.
too.
Yes,
exactly. That's where Jesus is as well.
And that's part of privilege. Part of privilege is your ability to pretend like those things aren't happening. That's part of privilege. Part of privilege is your ability to spend hours meditating and reading and keeping that higher conscience, so that you're not bothered by the cares of this world, right? But you go into the inner city where there's a woman who, and this is something that keeps me grounded. And when I was doing my prayers and meditation, is I was getting ready to start talking about things in terms of metaphysics, of meditation, of spirituality. And right when I was about to start, I think I was going to write something write a piece and then speak on it. And right when I was getting ready to start, what I heard was, if you can't stand in the middle of the kitchen in front of a woman who just got off of her 8-hour job in time enough to come home, cook breakfast, get the kids up, get them ready, send them off to school, only to go to her second job while praying all the while that as her kids walk out that door, they don't turn to the right and run into the drug dealer, turn to the left and run into the racist cop, or go forward and get hit in the street. If you can't say that in front of her and not be afraid of getting the shit slapped out of you, then don't say it at all. And so that has really grounded me, and it keeps, you know, and when I tell people, when I get insecure, when I think that people are thinking to themselves, oh, she just needs to be enlightened, or I be wanting to say, listen, you don't know how much I study. You, like, this has been my life, right? I can talk all of that stuff. And you know that, Amy, I can talk all of that stuff. However, once that came to me, when I was like, oh, because every time I get ready to, I think of her. Can I stand in front of her and say that? Can I tell her exactly when is she supposed to, because she don't have money to go off to a retreat for a weekend, or go do yoga 5 times a week, right? Go do yoga 5 times a week, or go to a meditation retreat.
I'm squirming.
You know, right? So there's a element of privilege there. To even think that way, there's an element of privilege there. And so I think about that woman all the time when I'm talking. And so I think that helps keep my talk, my speech grounded, right? Where I have to speak from the heart versus based off of metaphysics or how the mind works, or all of these other things that are used to keep people in this coma-like state where they can't see anything but love and light, and they disconnect from their fellow man. Right now, I'm not saying don't use these things, because all of these tools, and that's exactly what they are, whether it's religion, whether it's metaphysics, all of that stuff, the spiritual sciences, the religion, all of that, those are tools. Those are tools. And so you use those tools in a way that brings out the best of who you are, meaning they are the things that challenge who you are. Mm-hmm. So that you could show yourself approved, that you can look and go, whoa, that's ugly, right? So that you take the time, their tools to allow you to take the time to look inside of yourself and see, are you aligned? Is your heart and mind and actions aligned? You know, how do you feel about yourself? Because whatever you feel about yourself, you feel about the other. You can't give anything that you haven't first received from yourself. You can't receive anything that you haven't first given to yourself. Like, those are tools to help you do your work, but they've been weaponized against us. They've been weaponized against us to make us feel superior in some ways, and to disconnect from our fellow man and blame them for being in their condition because they're not like us, because they're not doing spiritual work, because they're not in this religion, because they're not aware of mindfulness, because they don't meditate, because we have all these reasons why, except the only reason we ain't came up with yet is that the system is built on racism. That's like, I'm waiting for us to get down to that reason. Like, can we just get down to that reason? Because it seems simple. It seems simple. But yeah, no, it's not, obviously.
And to catch up on some comments, so Preston said, watch The Family on Netflix. It talks about power and government using religion as a scapegoat. Woo. I have not watched that, so I need to watch it.
Girl, that's crazy. Yes. That when I watch The Family, because this is the thing, why you watching it, it's like, is that real? But then you see like real houses that actually exist, with real people who you know. And you're like, but wait a minute, this real footage. So this is real. Is that crazy? Where you be like, I know, and yeah, it's crazy. But yeah, The Family on Netflix, it is worth a watch. If you want to know how this political system really operates behind the scenes, how we get our everything, yeah, watch it.
And Jane is talking, your cousin Jane, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks.
Absolutely.
And all of what is and has happened is a heart thing, and you can't change someone who doesn't think that they have a problem. They first have to admit it.
You know, she brought up the heart thing, and that again is one. I believe that that's true, right? However, I also believe that it's been hijacked by this myth of divine destiny. Because when we say it's a heart thing, if you are if you love Jesus, if you love God, if you are a Christian, you don't feel like it is a heart thing because you've already changed your heart. You've given it over to God. Therefore, your heart is fine. There's no reason for you to check it, right? There's no reason for you to change it because you did change it. And now you have salvation. You are saved, right? And how in the world could somebody who has given their heart to God, how in the world could they be racist? Absolutely not. I have close Black friends who go to my church, and they come over for dinner and they do this, and we pray together, and I love my Black. How can you be racist and have God in your heart? It's an impossibility to many people who suffer from racism. It is an empire. They can't even fathom how it's possible that they could have any bit of racism in them, and therefore in their world they don't have a bit of racism in them. And then I be reading their posts and being like, damn, that's racist. But in their world, no, no, I've got salvation. I'm saved. There's no racism here, just the love of God. Everything I do is for God. I hear a lot of that. Everything I do is for God. I am standing for God. Everything that I do, and right is right, according to, again, the person who controls the narrative can control the story. And so they control their own story by saying, no, I'm righteous. I have a divine destiny. God is on my side. God is the head. God is leading me, right? And therefore, I have a right, and I have not only a right, an obligation to stand in this fight against making progress, against making progress, right? Against these people out here rioting, against these lawless people. Right? I have an obligation for the sake of God. Yeah, it's ridiculous, but it's the way it's going down. At least that's the way I've experienced it. That's the way it looks, sounds, feels, and I believe the proof is in the pudding. So for those who want to say, well, that's your perspective, cool. But the proof is in the pudding. Look out in the streets and see what's going on. This ain't about perspective. This is about experience, the human experience, and what the humans on this ground is experiencing right now. You can't explain that away. You can't. We got to get further along in history for you to be able to whitewash that. But today you can't, because we're experiencing it. Yep. Let me see. Did we hit everything? I think we're a little over an hour now.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think that is the biggest stronghold, Amy, is when you feel that you're doing it on behalf of God and that you've been ordained by God. And you know what would be really interesting is if, you know how you said y'all had the picture of Jesus up, you know, in the church. What if one day like in a alternate universe. But what if one day, if somebody want to, I ain't even gonna say that on camera because I don't want to incite nothing. But what if one day, one Sunday, every white person walked into their respective churches and the picture of Jesus was black? I wonder how many would lose their religion. Like, for real, how many would be like, but the saddest, the even sadder thing is how many black people would lose their religion, which is sad. That if the picture of Jesus was black, they would think it was a false god. I mean, the thought of that is sad, but I wonder, like, how many white people, if all over the world, the picture of Jesus, they woke up one morning and all of a sudden Jesus was black.
So now I'm really curious because my mom goes to a church in Idaho now. Mm-hmm. And I would say that her church follows Black Jesus because it's more in alignment with what I read in the Bible versus what I heard growing up. Mm-hmm. And I wonder what the picture looks like. Because most of the people that go there are white, but I think they understand that Jesus isn't. So I'm going to ask their pastor to send me a picture of what they have up because I'm really curious now.
Yeah. And okay, I'm just going to throw one more monkey wrench in this. Okay. I'm going to throw one more monkey wrench in and let them come after me. But the truth of the matter is, the way that whole story, I'm not saying, like, I believe that there was a character, right? Just like there is in every in everybody's story, there was a character. I don't know what this character's name was, but obviously he did some great things, right? But this story of creation and how it is talked about and taught, a little bit of research, just a little bit. You ain't got to do a whole lot, but a little bit of research will tell you that this is a common story from different times, way before this story of Jesus. It's a common story, right? And so Jesus is not unique at all, at all. We can find many Jesuses. Now they're going to be by different names, but it's going to be the same story. That was way before the one that told them to own my people. Way before that one, right? Mm-hmm. And not only that, for any of the stories, you're going to find those stories in every culture from other times way before you ever found them in the Bible. These stories were adapted oftentimes from other cultures' stories of how they saw deity, how they experienced deity. And it was just adapted, right? So as they were colonizing, they were picking up other people's stories and creating their own. Now, you only have to do a little bit of research. Now, that's a scary thing, though, because if your whole life and your whole belief system has been built on it, I understand that's scary. But when that belief system is part of holding together a racist society, then I implore you to be courageous and look at it. Be courageous, because what you're tearing down is not the creator, is not the all, the unspeakable. What you're tearing down is a created God, one that was created to justify and support what we see today, right? And that's why he has the attributes of men. That's why he has all the attributes of men. He's angry, he's jealous, he's, fiery, he's, all of these. That's why he has the attributes of men. because men create in their own image. You know, that's what we do. But yeah, so that's to throw another monkey wrench in there. That's, and I know that's probably like telling kids that there's no Santa Claus, but there you go. Do your research on it, and we need. This is imperative. This is not just talking about religion or God or what have you, to talk about what's right or who's the real God or not the real God. We're talking about a system here that is tearing our country apart, keeping people disconnected. And the divine, what is it? The manifest destiny is part of keeping that system together. So your thoughts about feeling like God is giving you the land and God is, has ordained you to do this and that and all that kind of stuff, check that, question it. Because I'm telling you, some stuff, if you just sit and question logically, it don't make a hell of sense. Even if you don't question it logically and you just look within, it still don't make a hell of sense, right? Anything that disconnects you from your brother, you need to cut that loose, to include a created God. Did I just go off on there? I just went off on a tangent. Girl, I know, Andy, you like, good thing it's your platform. They coming to get you. They coming to get you. But I mean, these are serious conversations, and this needs to be a part of the race conversation, because this is what's holding people back from really opening up to truth about where this country is. And anything that's in the way needs to be bulldozed down, to include ideologies and all of that kind of stuff that ain't nowhere new, that's based off of racism.
I just lost sight of the comments. All right, we're good.
Okay. All right. So tomorrow it is, oh, girl, tomorrow is Myth of White Racelessness. I don't see, is that, I don't see color?
And I don't have an
accent. That's the normal thing.
I'm normal. I don't have an accent. The way I act is the way everyone should act.
Right. So the Myth of White Racelessness. Yeah, that's gonna be a good one too. So join us tomorrow, y'all, and share the video too.
I don't know about sharing this one.
Oh, they're gonna come get you. Look, you know they're gonna be Googling me and coming to get me, sending me stuff. I don't care, because listen, my thing is with anything like this, versus lashing out and all of that, take the video, listen to it, and sit with it. Yeah. And then go do your research. Don't waste time commenting on here and spewing whatever you think and da, especially. And listen, when you do your research, don't start spewing research that was done out of white history books. Like, really? No, you go look at real historians, not those things that were whitewashed to control the narrative and wipe out the history of America and what it really is. No, you go study the real history. Go watch the real documentaries seen from outside of the white point of view, right? Not told through the white lens that is told in a way to remain the hero or to remain the righteous or to remain the good person. Don't do it through that way. Listen, watch the documentaries, watch the movies, read the books by Black scholars, because listen, there are a lot of Black scholars out there, lo and behold. I know a lot of people don't think that, but there are a lot of Black scholars out there. Follow their work. I often mention Dr. Joy DeGruy because she's in this work. But just like you, why did I forget?
I always mention, Ibram X. Kendi is a historian that a lot of people follow too.
Yeah. You read the poets. Like, we had some dope poets who wrote about the experience, the American experience as a Black person in their poetry, especially like listen to the poets and the songwriters. And
You're frozen. Is that me or is that you?
I guess we kind of blank.
I can't hear Queen. I don't know if you guys can hear me.
Okay.
Oh, now I see
I
you
don't know
now.
what happened. Look, that might have been White Jesus. He tried to get me. Oh my God, he didn't
I took a screen print of what you look like so I can send it to you. It was really cool. You looked like a painting.
Oh, did
I'll send it to you.
I? All right. Well, I guess we'll end there. I'll talk to you tomorrow night when we're talking about white racelessness. And I hope that your platform joins us tomorrow. It's always nice to have comments and things like that to bounce off of, to see where people are. And again, for those of you who haven't joined us the last couple of nights, what we're doing here is we're having real conversation. We just get on here and start talking about it, right? Because that's what people are doing in their everyday life. You don't have time to sit and write out a script, and that doesn't work anyway, right? These are real heartfelt conversations.
It doesn't work if you're talking to Queen.
Now that's true. It don't even work. It don't even work for Queen when you're talking to Queen. Shoot, it don't even work for me.
But if you missed the ones before, probably the easiest place to find them is if you go to my Facebook page, so North Shore Acupuncture Center, under videos, there's a playlist for hard conversations, and these get copied into there.
And I think they're still showing up on my feed as well. So yeah, if you don't remember to go there, I just go to my feed and hit on North Shore Acupuncture Center, and it takes me to Amy's page. So yeah. Thank you, Amy, for another good convo.
Thank you for just torching the whole thing down.
Hey, that's what.
Have a good night.
Hey, I'm here. I'm here to help you. I'm just here. I'm here to get the people what they want.
Yep.
If they want fire, I got to bring fire.
And thank you guys for the comments and joining us in the conversation too.
Yes.
And Randy, for anything that you keep bringing to us when we can't think of someone.
Right. He my good dude down there. Thank you, baby.
Hey.
All right.
Good night.
Good night.